with nonprofits in general, how can we move from just sitting at a meeting together and really work towards where we're building these sustainable collaborations and partnerships that are long-lasting past 1 year to 2 years, and we're really looking at 10 and 20-year partnerships with major organizations. So that's why we're here today. Alex, do you want to go ahead and move to the next slide? Perfect. A lot of you know me. I'm Christina Clark. I'm the resident and founder of KM Clark Consulting Group. I had 10 years with community coalitions, and for the last 3, I've been training with the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America as one of their mentee trainers for the National Coalition Academy. And then I have spent the last 14 years in nonprofit work in general. Started my career with being a domestic violence advocate, working domestic violence agency in Tennessee, in the Middle Tennessee area, and then was an in-home youth counselor for at-risk youth before moving into the world of prevention coalitions, which obviously is where my heart lies today. And my real passion for the work of nonprofit work is really about sustainability and capacity building, and that's why Alex and I wanted to put together this webinar today, is because we truly believe that sustainability for all nonprofits and organizations is built on the power of people and their ability to come together. So I'm excited to be with you here today. Alex?
Hi guys, my name's Alex Windings. I know a lot of you as well. I saw some really familiar names coming up on the screen. I'm also with KM Clark Consulting Group. I have exactly half of Christina. I didn't even notice that until I was looking at the screen now. It's kind of funny. Exactly half of the work in with community coalitions. Previously, before working with a lot of you all statewide and in different states, I was the director over in Williamson County at the coalition there for several years, and prior to that worked with United Ways and different nonprofits throughout all of high school and college. And so I'm also excited to be here with you guys, and excited to hear from you and learn what you all are doing with your coalitions, and hopefully give you some new ideas on capacity building.
So thinking about objectives and why we're here today, we really want to make sure that at the end of the day, you learn how to collaborate with intention and purpose for mutual benefit. And we'll be talking more about that and what we mean by mutual benefit and moving forward to those true lasting collaborations I mentioned earlier. And then, of course, those tips for creating long-lasting partnerships with cross-sector collaborations, and then how you can engage and find talent and partnerships in new ways. And this is going to be an interactive webinar. We're going to ask you questions because I really feel like I want you guys to leave with some things you can really move forward with, some action steps, or at least some thoughts you can take back to your coalitions or to your organizations. So we will be asking you guys to report out and kind of putting a mural wall together at one point that Alex is going to walk us through. So please be open-minded and speak out, because we really want to hear from you so we can learn from each other, and then, of course, give those tips and tricks as well. So first, and speaking of that, we kind of want to just take a moment and find out, why are you on the webinar today? What are you looking to get out of it? So if we can have a few of you just say what either you need to get out of it because you have some type of barrier coming up, or you have something you're trying to work through with a partner, or what is a want that you have that you're trying to get out of this webinar today. Leah, if you want to unmute everyone, or if you guys want to use the chat box. And I
So I think what we're going to have to do, because there is some massive amounts of feedback, is have you unmute yourself on your screen. There should be a little microphone that you can unmute yourself and talk through this. Oh, I see Kathy Gapper came in through the chat. Thank you, Kathy. I want to hear about what coalitions are doing and what I might be able to do. Sorry, good guys. I had to come on and mute some more people. So Kathy, thank you for responding there in the chat. She said, I want to hear about what coalitions are doing and what I might be able to do to help them with their goals. I think that is great. Thank you, Kathy, for responding. If anybody else wants to answer the question that's on your screen, what are you looking for today through this webinar? Probably just go ahead and use the chat on your screen if you want to type something in there, and I'll go ahead, and Christina and I will read it out loud. Oh, thank you, Julie. Julie Long says, I am in the process of trying to form a youth coalition, so I need partnerships. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Julie.
What coalitions are doing, Kathy, and how you can work better with them, because that really goes in. We can use that as examples. We're talking about really building powerful partnerships and collaborations, because your department, TDEC, is a great one of those to work with, so we can really talk about that. And then Larita Jordan saying, we are looking for ways to create longer lasting, more substantial partnerships as well. So those will be things we'll be tackling today. So thank you all for responding. Alex?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, I had to get you backed up. I was looking at everybody's chat. Did Adam say something? Oh, I have Adams on here too. I have relationships with independent healthcare offices, but most everything is run by corporation. I would like to find ways to incorporate them. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing. And Christina, sorry, I think I had you muted for a second, so I apologize for that. We're still, like I said, still working out the kinks with this system, so I appreciate you guys being patient with us. So again, using your chat box, I'm going to have Leah looking at the chat box here. I'm going to come out of our webinar here and bring up this mural. Hopefully everybody can see it. I know it's maybe a little bit smaller on your screen, but we're going to go back to the questions. What has been your best experience with partnerships and collaborations? And what has maybe been one of your worst experiences with partnership and collaboration? So go in the chat box again, answer those two questions, best or worst. Best or worst experience with partnership and collaboration, and then I'm going to start putting them up on the screen here. Best and worst experience.
Well, and I'll kick it off, Alex. When I think about our best collaboration, especially when I was in coalition, it was really our relationship with Centerstone and understanding that it wasn't just one person at Centerstone that I needed to work with, that there was multiple prevention programs headed by different people, multiple treatment programs funded and led by different people. And so we had multiple people at the table representing them, different memorandums and contracts with each of those, and it just made it so we didn't just have Centerstone, but all these individuals sitting on the table to make it really a cross-collaborative effort whenever we were doing prevention activities, and that we could really share and leverage funding. And then I would say probably our worst was we were having partners with someone that we're working on a conference with, and we didn't set the ground rules enough for that collaboration, and it kind of got away from us, and we lost our mission and focus as we were moving forward. And that was definitely a lack on our part for not having that unified voice and understanding when we first got started.
Thank you, Christina. And I see a lot of people coming in now through the chat bar. I'm trying to capture them as they come in. I think Larita has law enforcement. decision making, yeah, okay. What are some other ones that we're seeing trying to get people?
Trying to get, I'll read them off to you. Julie Long says, trying to get people to put action behind their ideas, and I think that's it's really hard when we're working together, especially in coalitions, to move from talking about it to actually getting done to the work, so I think that's a great one. Gabby said, we partnered with 2 local groups, Madisonville City and Monroe County, used to do a prevention mural, and it was amazing, one of the best projects I've ever done, so that's one of the best ones. They're doing a mural. Xavier, best is when all understand, and then all understand in all 12 sectors. Worst is no clear objective when all are in the room. Oh my gosh, yes, so true. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Like, we don't want to have meetings just to meet. And I always say one tip is whoever comes with the agenda is who's going to win the meeting. And it's so true. Even if it's not your meeting, sometimes people are getting together and they don't have a real focus. And when a coalition or coalition leader can come in with what their objective and focus is and how we can bring people together, we end up having a lot of wins because we can control the narrative, so to speak. So I think that's a great point. Thank you, Xavier. Anyone else? Okay, and then Gabby said, worst is trying to get all cities in our county to have one beer/liquor license across the county, and one city refuses to even discuss it. Yes, that is a huge barrier, and I think something we all run across in our counties throughout Tennessee. Any other final notes from anyone? All right, I think you're good to go, Alex.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for doing that. I think that's helpful just to kind of see where everybody is and some different worst and best experiences that y'all are seeing in your communities. I know everybody's communities are so different, but we're going to jump into why is collaboration so important? Why are we talking about this today? Why is this such a big topic that we're all having across the state? We have a lot of people on today, and we're all kind of interested about this topic. So why is it so important? Really the big thing is because we're looking at the capacity of your coalition. We're looking at the people that you have at the table. We're looking at the different people that you have here that are able to provide different things to your community through your coalition. So having this, specific capacity defined on our screen here, specific ability of an entity or resource measured in quantity or level of quality over an extended period. So I really want to focus on those 2 words, quantity and quality. We talk a lot, I think, about quantity because we have those 12 sectors that everybody are trying to kind of reach those 12 sectors, get those 12 sectors represented, especially if you have the Drug-Free Communities grant, different grants. They're looking for those 12 sectors. They're looking for you to have a big group of people sitting at the table. But sometimes, just from my own experience, back with our coalition, we had those 12 sectors at the table, but a lot of times they really were coming just for the free lunch. Like our webinar is titled More Than Just a Free Lunch. We had a lot of people sitting at the table. They were quantity, we had the numbers, but the level of quality wasn't necessarily there. And I think we're really going to dive deep into that quality piece today and really focus on that and say, okay, yes, we may have quantity, but how can we make those people quality? How can we really get them from moving from just coming to a monthly meeting or a quarterly meeting or whatever it might be, to actually getting them to do action and getting them to do work within your community and really start making a change that way. That's really where we kind of want to move with this. And Christina, like I said, if there's anything I missed, please jump in. Don't think you're going to cut me off or anything. So why is capacity so important? Obviously, we just saw, most of you probably know the SPIF, the Strategic Prevention Framework here. Capacity is a part of that, but why is it so important? We've got a few things listed here. It's obviously going to increase our sustainability, right? But also decreases the need for additional overhead and staff and supplies. If you have a huge group of volunteer-led coalition members that are doing the work, that takes a lot of, stuff off the plate of staff. It takes off the plate the different things that they need to get done. If you're able to pass it along to people in the community who are volunteering for that, then it takes a huge weight off of the staff's shoulders of doing all of that. It increases the likelihood of reaching your goals and objectives. I know that there are a lot of coalitions out there that are a one-man staff team. I was that for 3.5 years, so I know that it's really hard when you're looking at your different plans and you have all these goals, you know what's going on in your community, and you're like, we really want to work on this, we want to help this, we see there's an issue here, we want to meet this need, but you're just one person. You can't do it all. I thought for a while there that I could do it all, and I was definitely mistaken. After a couple of months in, I was like, okay, no, like I can't do this all. So when you have that increased capacity, when you have those other people at the table who are willing to work with you and know the goals and objectives, you're so much more likely to reach those when you're all working together versus just having one person doing all the work. And then I know Christina probably will chime in on this last one because I know that this is something that's really, really passionate about is the true grassroots community development. If it's just one person doesn't, speak for the whole community. When you really have a whole group of people from different sectors, different walks of life, different ages, different thought processes, different things like that, you're really going to have that true grassroots development of a community, that true change you're going to see when you have those people who actually live and work and do things in that community. You're going to see that change when they are the ones that are really doing the work and partnering together.
And Alex is right. Of course, I'm going to chime in right here. But I like to see capacity, even though when we look at the strategic prevention framework, it's one step from the outside, not in the middle. To me, capacity really is the heart and in the middle of the work we do. And I always say that if you think about sustainability as a house and the foundation of that house truly is those people holding it up. And you can lose the roof that might be funding or maybe have a project not do as well, which could be one of the walls. But if you always have that strong foundation of community members at the table with a clear goals and objectives and mission, it's so important. And I know coalitions in general struggle with the idea that we're all the work's on us, as Alex said. And when we can shift to the idea that we're coordinating, not doing the work, but coordinating the work amongst these volunteers, and it's our job to empower them and give them the skills to move forward, that's when we really see real growth and sustainability and those long-lasting partnerships, because we have to give them that ownership. They have to own the work they're doing. The only way they're going to do that is if they're doing it with you. And that's why it's so important as you move forward thinking about true partnerships and collaborations is how can we engage and empower people in the work. And I know all of us a little, if you're in coalition work, I haven't met anyone who's leading with a little type A, and it's hard for us to let go sometimes. But when we let go and we break down some of that and allow some other people to run with some of these projects, that's when we're going to really start to see those partnerships and that true grassroots development that we're looking for.
Thank you, Christina. So what does this mean for collaborations and partnerships? I think we kind of talked a lot about this already, but we need to be connected with our organizations that we're working with, not just having them sit at the table. We're really going to focus a little bit later on really how we connect with the people that are sitting at the table. Instead of just bringing them together once a month and reporting out to them, what are some really strategic ways that we can connect with them and build lasting relationships with them? As Christina's talked about, those real lasting relationships, those 10, 15, 20-year partnerships that we have with people. How can we grow those? How can we make those work for our community and what that looks like moving forward? And Christina, I think it's back to you now.
Yeah. So we wanted to take a moment and really talk about silos, because I know that is jargon in terms, however you want to say it, that comes up a lot in our work and any community grassroots work, is the idea that we all are trying to break down silos. If everyone could just break down silos. We hear it at the state departments all the time. We hear about it in our communities. And so we want to take a minute and really talk about those, because a lot of times when we're battling these, it feels like people are just purposely not working with us. And a lot of times it's our job to figure out how we can break down those barriers that we come across. And so this is just, I'm going to kind of read this comment just because I think it's adorable and very true when we start thinking about changing the lens in which we see silos so that we are better able to break down those barriers and work with people that are in these silos. And you'll see the boss coming saying that when we finally realized that we needed to collaborate better, we gave up our beloved shared drive and deployed Microsoft SharePoint, right? And the guy's like, yeah. Then we were able to better communicate and improve productivity, remember? Yes, and it works perfectly, so what's the problem? Problem is all of our partners are outside the company and they don't know SharePoint. And I think this speaks to when we're using all the verbiage and talk we use in coalition world or in any organization we're in, whether we're with the State Department or within the Strategic Prevention Framework, a lot of times we have our own language, and the first barrier is realizing that everyone doesn't speak that language, and how can we get across the work of the coalition without using that language at every meeting and really involve people, but also realize that a lot of people don't know that they aren't sharing things. They don't realize it until later on. And so that's why, if you'll move to the next slide, Alex. I wanted to define mentality and then really think about there's two different versions of this. There's the one where certain people do not wish to share information with others in the same company. Like they're not even sharing it within their own company, much less with outside organizations. And I came across this a lot, and just with one of our school systems personally, that it wasn't that they just didn't want to share information with an outside agency. They had their own little fiefdoms within the school system that didn't want to share their information. And this is important to figure out when we're going through and seeing how can we work better with people, because we have to see where those exact barriers are. It's not just that they won't share information. They're not sharing information internally. So how can we work to better them coming to the table? Do we have those multiple departments come together and say, hey, we need to talk about this. We need additional data. How can we make this work? And then there's also silo mentality that can occur when just one team of a certain group doesn't want to share anything, or just one sector doesn't want to share anything. So it can come across like people don't know that they need to share information, so they just haven't thought about it, and so they're living in silos only because no one's asked. And then there's the people that purposely are withholding information, and we have to figure out why that is. Is it because they're afraid they're going to lose their jobs? Are they afraid bad numbers are going to get out about their school system or about their county? Is it whatever the issue is, it's our job as we're trying to break down these silos to build these relationships. And that's why I always say that when you're building capacity, you're truly in a courting and dating relationship. Like, how do you go about talking to someone that you want to meet, that you want to build a friendship with for the first time? You have to use those same skills when we're talking about partnership building. You don't just want to show up the first time you meet someone that you want to be a friend with and be like, we're going to be best friends now. You're coming over to my house and spending the night. This is what's happening. And it's the same way with partnerships. We don't want to just show up and be like, we want you to sign the MOU today, and we expect you to share all our data. Coalition work is hard work because it does take time, because it's our job to really do the work of finding out what is that barrier that's creating that silo, and how can we work with them so they work better within themselves, but then also are a better link in our chain for partnership building. And the other thing I want you to remember is that it really is about leadership. And a lot of times this comes from the top down. So if you're seeing an agency you're really struggling with, a lot of times it does need to come from the leader that they need to tell their department to share with you, or if it's just the leader that's being the biggest barrier, who can speak to that leader well. I know in every one of our communities, regardless if it's a sheriff or directors of schools, there's someone else in the community that they look to and that they'll listen to, whether it's a board member, whether it's that we have a mayor who's a mayor for a long time in one of the communities I work with, and even though he was no longer a mayor and he had retired from his other work, he's still someone everyone listens to. When things got really hard, you'd go to him and he would go and be like, listen, let's have this conversation. It doesn't always have to be you having the conversation. Finding the right person and the right voice is so important. And that's where it comes, as Alex moves on to the next slide, of how do we break down these silos. And again, it goes really back to, and I know this comes from my psych background, I'm sorry, but we really just have to be actively listening and having these real relationships with people where we're understanding where they're coming from and figuring out how best our organization can assist them in their goals, but also meet our goals at the same time. And so what we really need and what needs to be communicated at all the coalition meetings, but also when you're meeting with partners or your board meetings or board members are meeting with potential partners, is a unified vision, making sure everyone's on the same page and that you really do have concrete common goals. If you're going to talk to the directors of schools and there's been someone that's been a barrier for you, how can you help make their goals happen? Are they having issues with truancy? Are they having issues with school dropouts? And let them know how your data and the work you're doing is going to affect those truancy rates and those dropout rates, because the work we do is so interconnected. And it's our job to show them how it's interconnected. And again, how can we motivate and incentivize them? Ask them, what do you really need out of this? What is going to make this an effective partnership for you? And how can we motivate you to stay involved? There's nothing wrong with asking those questions. And I say this all the time. We're all so passionate about this work. We wouldn't be doing it if we weren't. No one's making millions of dollars doing it. We do it because we love it and we know it matters. But not everyone we work with loves everything about coalition work. And they don't have to. What we need to do is find out what motivates and is going to incentivize them to be at the table and make that happen so that we both get what we want out of the partnership. The next part is really making sure we track and evaluate. And I think this is true of every partnership. I know we do this in the strategic prevention framework when we talk about, we're going to get our school survey data, we're going to do some qualitative focus groups. But really even thinking about it in terms of partnerships, if our school system says they really want to see something different with school dropout rates, or they want to see fighting or drug use in the schools go down, or whatever it is, we need to make sure we're tracking and monitoring that so that we can be sharing those successes one-on-one with them, making sure we're having those moments to celebrate, even if it's a simple, coffee meeting, or inviting them down and be like, listen, this is what we've done together. We should celebrate this. Or we put together this press release because this is the work we've done together, you've allowed us to do, has done this much for your students. And again, that's our job of trying to figure out how can we celebrate them and show them that they're getting the pat on the back for the work that we're doing. And that's why, especially when we were getting some really great coverage on some of the stuff we were doing with prescription drugs, we made sure the face on the Tennessean was our chief of police and was our local pharmacist, and talking about what their own departments or what their own business were doing for it, because they are, again, those links in the chains. If we can continue to give them that motivation and show them the work they're doing, the longer that relationship is going to last. And this is all from a great article, if you have time, from Forbes, of how to break down the barriers and silos. And really, again, this is coming from a company organizational standpoint, but so relative and relatable to the work we do in coalitions. So as I mentioned before, we really want this to be intentional and take a moment to be very intentional, because we want you to be able to come out of this webinar thinking, what are some next steps I can take towards a partnership I want to build? And again, it's not going to happen overnight with all your partners, but that's why I wanted to take a minute and say, if you could just get blank accomplished, what would fill in your blank? Where are you currently with this? And what are your barriers to succeeding? And thinking about this in terms of any of your goals, so an actual, that we need to build a youth coalition, or we need additional funding, anything like that, so that we can move on and think about what partners that you can intentionally bring to the table for it later on. You can just take a moment and in the chat box, right? If you could just get blank accomplished, what would it be? Okay, Loretta said funding. Anyone else? Just use your chat box. If you could just get blank accomplished, what would it be? Funding and community partnerships for Youth Coalition. Goppa said one goal. So Kathy, okay, Kinter said, hard time getting underage compliance checks done in our county. So underage compliance checks accomplished. One last call. Anyone else have? Oh, and Bob had done law enforcement participation and funding, Xavier, sector representation. Great. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing. And I really want you to be thinking about those as we move forward with the next slides, and we're going to come back to this. I'm not going to leave you hanging. Alex is going to come back to this with you. So we're going to go ahead and do next slide. So how do we build new partnerships? And these are a few things. We're going to actually walk through some of them. But the first is know your organization and its strengths and weaknesses. I think it's so important to really know what's happening in your organization so that you know, A, who to bring to the table to help with those strengths, and who can also, who can help with those weaknesses, and also who's there to promote those strengths. So if you haven't, I encourage you to do a SWOT analysis. A strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats is what that stands for, analysis, and a coalition inventory. And when I say coalition inventory, it's actually going to your members and membership and having them fill out surveys about why they're at the table, what they want to do there, how that they can help you function, and really looking about, so you're best utilizing who's at the table already. And then the SWOT analysis, again, is to figure out where are your strengths right now with coalitions, where are your weaknesses, what are some opportunities that you guys have for growth, and what are some threats to that growth. So I really encourage all organizations to do that. And my little kind of push or chant for the coalition inventory is, and there's lots of different ways, and we can send some stuff to Leah to send out as a resource as well for some of these. But the coalition inventory, the reason why it's important, at least once a year, that kind of survey your membership and ask why are you at the table, what do you want to get accomplished in the next couple of years, is because at times I had put people in roles, and specifically a pharmacist in a role of leading one of our groups, a committee, a short-term action team that was directed at pharmacies and how we're getting pharmacies involved. And she came to me later and said that she didn't want to do that, that wasn't her role, because she wanted to be there as a mother whose child was struggling with substance use. And that was my bad for not asking that question. We can't assume. People are so layered, and we have to figure out why they're at the table so we can utilize them in a way that best suits them and keeps them at the table, but also is in the best interest of the coalition. And so that's why I encourage you, please ask, take a moment and do those surveys once a year so you can really motivate and encourage your membership currently at the table, and then find out what you really need. It allows you to figure out where are we missing. Like if we need funding, do we have grant writers at the table? Do we have people that are willing to go and ask foundations for money? This is the way we figure that out so we can make sure we have the right people at the table. Research who is out there and discover what motivates the individual organization. Again, this goes back to not everyone has to love everything about coalition work or prevention. It's our job to ask either the person directly or find people that they're related to that they can immediately go and talk to about that. And then finally, intentionality, which we're going to talk about more in the next slide, and work with digestible pieces. And Alice is going to hit on that later in the webinar. So when I say intentional communication, I'm really talking about thinking about when and how we speak and communicate to all our different partners and potential partners. So are you communicating what you are doing and what you want from potential partners well? So this goes back to that shared vision and one goal. And so the first thing I always say, especially if you're a new coalition leader or just a new coalition in general, is to get involved in other community councils, organizations, including local government. Show up at every single meeting to find out what's going on, whether it's your house council meeting, whether it's a commissioner's meeting, whether it's a foundation meeting that's coming up, making sure you're at the table, making yourself recognized, but also taking time to take notes. This goes back to that research about everyone at the table and why they seem to be at the table. What are they trying to get across from their organization? And then be open to all types of partnerships. I think sometimes we kind of get stuck in, we want this huge goal accomplished. We want to decrease youth substance use, and of course that's our overall goal. And so we partner with someone just thinking about that. And instead, think about like smaller digestible pieces. Like we need more training on prevention, evidence-based prevention treatment. Who can we work with on a rural conference just on that piece of something that will eventually take down that decreasing youth substance use? Really starting to think about in digestible pieces those different types of partnerships. And it could be, if someone brought up corporations, like, is there a possibility to have some type of partnership with a Walmart or one of your local Walgreens, like we were able to do in one of our counties? Like really being open to the idea that it doesn't have to be set in these 12 sectors, even though we do need those 12 sectors at the table, but there's so many different options out there for us. And then, of course, this is true of all things, all the behavior you want for the coalition and its members. if you're talking about how important collaboration is, then you better be stepping up and collaborating. And that's why it's so important that you're involved in all those different meetings. You have those tables, even though we know all the time those tables don't always work, or maybe it's at one place that isn't going to have all the youth that you want to impact, or whatever population you're working on, but just having that table set up is a big win for that partner. And having people there for that day, even if it is different than your mission all the time, it's a win for them because you came and heard what they had to say, so later on they're going to come back. So it's really important that we're modeling the behavior we want, that we're involved, if we're saying we want to be here for the community, that we're stepping up and being there in all community things. And as I mentioned before, this isn't something that happens overnight. I talked about with partnership building, much like relationship and friendship building, it's a courting and a dating process. And that's why there's actually something called a partnership continuum. And the coordination stage is what we talk about as the research phase, when you're learning about each other, learning about each other's missions and how you could work well together. And when I even say this, sometimes I keep saying organizations, but it could just be an individual you want at the table. If it's someone who used to be a mayor in your area that is really still influential, or maybe a director of foundation that has retired that you want because they have good connections. Thinking about what motivates them, what are the different things they're involved in, just that coordination phase. And then cooperation is when you really start to plan some things together. Maybe they're starting to come to your meetings, they're coming to different events you have and doing a few things. So the cooperation is starting, that you're learning an increase of understanding and interest. And then collaboration is really when you've built that trust, respect, clear understanding of benefits, and you may be working on that specific project together. And this is really when we start thinking about, do we need a memorandum of understanding? Do we need some type of contract as we move into like a true lasting partnership, which is there's this high level of trust and communication, there's roles and responsibilities defined, and there's a shared us and shared resources. And I want to pivot on shared resources because a lot of people have brought up funding today. This is where if you have a really sustainable coalition, you have shared resources. So if you're doing something like a rural prevention conference, but someone else is putting just as much money into it, if you've had a really effective moral recognition therapy program with your youth, that now the school system has taken it on because they've seen how worthy it is, so now they're paying for it. And it kind of goes back to, I would say, if it's working, why are we the only ones funding it, meaning the coalition? Really saying that now we have this true partnership. So let's have defined roles, how we work together. Let's share the resources and the money that goes into it. And this is where we're really trying to get to in the end. Alex?
All right, thank you. So let's think back a second, just a few slides ago, where we, Christina had the question up, if I could just get blank accomplished. And there were several of you that answered in the chat, saying law enforcement participation, funding, sector representation, different things. Oh, funding came up several times. So think back to that. If you could just get blank accomplished, thinking back to that question, now asking a new question based on that. Who can you partner with to achieve that goal? I'm going to give you guys a second maybe just to chat in the box. Who can you partner with to achieve the goal that you mentioned? Or another goal that you may have not mentioned before. Just a goal that you have. Who can you maybe partner with? Do some thinking on that to achieve that goal. Lorita's saying we need buy-in from somebody with experience with grant writing. That's a great one, Lorita. Anybody else? Who can you partner with to achieve your goal? Okay, Lorita's, oh, nope, now there's Xavier. I was going to say Lorita's the only one. All 12 sectors at the table at the same time to achieve that goal, we need to partner with community leaders. Yeah, that's great, community leaders.
Alex, do you mind if I jump in for a minute?
Please, please.
And thinking about, just as you guys are moving forward with Loretta and Xavier, buying for someone with grant writing experience, really thinking about, who in your community has those. For us, we had a great one with our health council. She sat on so many boards and she was able to step in and help with grant writing, or if it's someone who used to work for the school system. So really thinking about doing that research on who in your community has been really successful at funding and then who knows them to help you get them to the table and get them invested in the coalition is really important. And then with Xavier, and Alex will talk about this in a minute, really those digestible pieces, thinking about what is the one sector right now instead of thinking about it in 12 right now. What is one that you really want to get in the next 3 months sitting at the table and work one at a time on getting that instead of seeing it in such like a large, big vision picture. How can we find like really actionable steps to move forward? Because it's what came up earlier, like how do we get people to move from ideas to action, and sometimes that's breaking it down in a way that makes it palatable so they can move forward on it. So I encourage you as you're thinking about this, not be like, I need all these people saying anything. Well, find the one like Marita and being like, we need someone to help with funding, and how can we move forward with just that? I'll be quiet now, Alex. I'm sorry.
No, don't. No, you are so fine. So fine. Totally fine. I'll give everybody, okay, it looks like, school board, hard to get them to stay after school. Yeah, Xavier, that's a good one too. It's a good one. Thank you guys so much. I want to just, and kind of piggyback on what Christina was just saying, capacity building and relationship building takes time. I think that this is one of the harder parts of coalition work because it just does take so much time. But that's okay. And like she said, starting small is okay too. Starting with this next slide, we're going to talk about digestible pieces. Starting with what you can do right now and building a plan off of that, and not maybe just looking at 12 sectors, especially for newer coalitions, or it can be daunting. That's a lot of people to have sitting at your table. But just think about it in small kind of pieces first, and look at the different things like, what do you need from them? How can we be intentional? Think about those things first, and then what's your first ask? What are those digestible pieces that we can look at? And this is something that you all can continue to do, not just today with these 2 questions we asked. The first one, if we could get blank accomplished and who can you partner with, use this with your board or use this with other members of your coalition. Talk through these things and say, what goals are we wanting to achieve? Who do we have sitting at the table already that might be able to do that, or who in the community might be able to help us with that? So looking at digestible pieces, this little thing on here makes me excited for Halloween coming up with all the little Reese's Pieces on there. I hope that it doesn't make anybody too hungry because it makes me want some sugar right now, not going to lie. But we're going to talk about just digestible pieces. So specifically looking at, let's say your ask for a partner that you're wanting to go after. Think maybe small first. Don't, go in maybe with this huge ask right off the bat when, you still haven't, created that relationship. It would be like me going up, somebody you just met or just had a first date with, and then the next time, asking them to marry you. You don't, usually, some cases maybe that happens, but for the most part, that usually doesn't happen, right? So we want to start off small, like Christina was talking about earlier, courting people, dating them type of mentality, really, breaking down that relationship with them and not just coming in right off the bat with a huge ask, but starting off small, building that relationship with them and writing it down first, making sure you know exactly what your ask is when you go in to start building this relationship with people. Make it relatable, make it actionable. Don't just come in with this massive idea, but really start to break down those ideas. So when you go in for that ask, that you can, have an exact idea of what you're kind of wanting to go after. Christina, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah. When you're thinking even about in terms of data, a lot of times you're like, I need data, and you go into the school system or the law enforcement and say, we need data on substance use. And I encourage you to get really specific with even data, being like, we need this exact piece. Is there any way you can help us with this? And it goes a long way to say, we have this hole, and we think you're the right person to help us fill this need we have. And that goes a long way of saying, we've thought about this. We're not just randomly grabbing, we've thought about you as filling this role. And if you can't for some reason, I understand, but who else could you help us find that is similar to you in this role that could help do this. And again, as she said, as actionable as possible. A lot of times we forget to make the ask. Every time, anything you're doing coalition work, there should be some type of ask, whether it's sign this pledge, or we need you to come to this meeting, or we need this copy paper, whatever it does, be really intentional about the ask. And it not being, and again, sometimes we just need you involved in the coalition. And that's so vague. What do you need them to do in the coalition? Having real roles and responsibilities, even if it's not written formally on paper, for people to feel like they're filling is going to keep them at the table longer. And I noticed in the chat, Julie Long said we have several community officials, county mayors, and law enforcement on our board, and we have people that are just in their name and only feels like we're having problems getting people to act on their ideas. And this is where, and I've said it over and over again, sometimes they're not the right people to be at the meetings. You need them on board 110%. It's nice to be able to call your mayor and have them say, yes, we can do that. But sometimes it's having a conversation with them being like, I know you're really busy, and so you have this vision. What are some worker bees that you could put on it that can start coming to our committee meetings or short-term action teams or work groups from the mayor's office who can help get some of this like hard work done, because you have these great ideas, but how can we get them moving forward? But I know you're busy. And sometimes that's what it is. You just need the right person from the mayor's office there, but he's still the one leading at some of those meetings. So it's finding a way to have that conversation. And even like when you talk about coalition involvement agreements and memorandums of understanding, yes, though you want a lot of times to have your sheriff or your chief, your superintendent sign off on it, I also encourage you to have them appoint someone else within their staff that will be the worker bee that also signs an MOU, also signs a coalition involvement agreement that is going to be there to do some of the work as well. That could be really powerful, because then you have two allies there and one that you know is going to get the work done that has been told that that's part of their task.
Awesome. Thank you. I think check the box there. Okay, it looks like we're up to date on our chat. Awesome. Our next piece is thinking outside the box, being intentional with our relationships, targeting organizations and individuals independently. So a couple different things here. Talking about thank you notes, I think, gosh, I feel like there is power in a thank you note, so much more even than there used to be, because we're so used to just, writing an email or sending a text, but actually taking the time to thank somebody for something they did for the coalition, no matter how big or small, I think is huge to building a relationship. Whenever I get thank you notes, even if it's, from something I just didn't even think about doing, I just did it, and I got a thank you note for it. It means so much more. So, a lot of people are having our drug take-backs coming up, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to have volunteers at that, maybe even volunteers that are new. I would encourage you, after the drug take-back, send them a thank you note or a thank you email, just something just to let them know that you really appreciated them coming out on their Saturday, volunteering for the coalition, working with you all, and thank your law enforcement too that are coming out. That's a huge piece of, we can't do our drug take-backs without law enforcement, so it's a huge piece to thank them, and just letting people know we're thankful for the work that they do. Setting up individual meetings. I don't think that Christina talks about this a lot, and I think just kind of mentioned this, that sometimes, we have our big monthly meetings, our big quarterly meetings. We don't always need those 12 sectors at every single one of those meetings. There may be some of your partners where setting up individual meetings with them is the best way to do it, and really talking through your goals and how you all can help one another is the best way to do it. So setting up those times is also just as important as our big meetings as well. And then targeted workshops and targeted campaigns. It's just thinking outside the box, getting creative with the way that you build relationships with people is extremely important. And Christina, I have a feeling that you might want to chime in on this one too.
No, I'm just going to, my final note was that, remember that one coalition brochure, one coalition one-sheeter doesn't work for all. You should be really thinking about the information you have a ton within the coalition, making sure you're targeting it for each person that you're talking to or each sector that you're going to, that you're not just bringing the same one sheet or the same brochure to all those people you're trying to get involved, that you're really tailoring it to what is going to motivate and incentivize them.
I want to say Xavier and Larita both said some good things in the chat. Xavier says, Community will come to a meeting after 6 p.m. It's hard to get city officials to come after 5, so we do a 2 p.m. meeting, or 2 meetings, one at 12 and one at 6. So, yeah, sometimes you have to, do different times, different days. Mix it up. I know we like our routines and we like to have, our meetings on the first Tuesday of the month at noon, but sometimes you're only going to get those exact, same group of people that are able to come to that. So maybe switch it up every other month, try a different day, try a different time to get a different group. And then Larita says that she puts a note on her desk calendar for 3 days after every meeting or event to acknowledge and thank people for their help. That is a great idea. I think that is an awesome idea. And we all need to be putting a little note on our desk calendar 3 days after every event and meeting we have. That's great, Larita. And I think, Christina, it is back to you.
Thank you. And yeah, this is really the next steps. It's kind of like after you get a big grant or big funding, and you're so excited and nervous about getting it, and all of a sudden you get and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to do all this work. And very similar with partners in collaboration, like, okay, I got this big partner, I have him at the table, okay, I'm in this, now what? And so these are just some tips of, say what you mean and mean what you say. If you say you're going to start a meeting and end a meeting on time, do it. If you say that you're going to be there and collaborate and show up and give them data, anything you say that you were going to do, make sure that you do it. And if you haven't, if you've made mistakes, that you acknowledge it and accept it. Like I said, this is truly like any type of marriage or relationship you have. To build it, you have to build this trust, and this is one of the ways you do it. Create an environment that encourages innovation. And I know this is really hard, especially for a lot of the communities we're in. We hear it a lot. The reason we do it this way is because we've been doing it forever. And we can get stuck kind of even in a rut within our coalition, be like, well, this is where we've always had our meetings, or this is how we've always set it up. And when we invite new people to the table, it's going to have new ideas. And our job as coordinators is to make those ideas welcome and also still make the people who have been there for a long time feel comfortable with it. That's why that constant communication is so important. But we need to be fostering an environment of innovation so we can continue to move forward and find innovative partnerships. Be fair, of course. You have long-standing partners. I would say, again, it's like, Courtney, you don't want to start bringing flowers to one person and forget about the other if you were dating someone. So really making sure that you're being fair and give everyone the attention that they need to continue having them at the table. And all partnerships are going to be different. What it looks like with one school system might not look like it is with another, and that's okay. Again, these really need to be meeting their and your needs, and that's going to be different with each partner that you're with. But I do want to stress this last point, because I think as coalition leaders and coalition, we are always there for everyone. I don't know a coalition who doesn't step up and go to most meetings and doesn't go to most community events. But we also need to make sure that our coalition is sustainable and that our goals are being met. And so it's really important that we know our bottom line and be prepared for what we're willing to commit to or what we're going to pull back from. And so that's important moving forward when we're talking about partnerships. Is what do we want and what are we willing not to take in this relationship? That we want to make sure we get this out of it, or it's not going to be fair to us. So avoiding conflict is huge. I know that we have it in all of our coalitions. We're talking about really important things within our communities and really sensitive topics. And so what I tell you, and what I will just stress in terms of avoiding conflict, is that active listening. Your job as a coalition meeting leader is to make sure everyone is heard, even if you don't always like what they have to say. Our job is to write it down if we're brainstorming, even if we think the idea is weird or quirky. Our idea is to listen to them. And then also listen if someone else is disagreeing within that group, or you feel like someone didn't talk out enough or they looked upset during that meeting. It's your job or someone else in your coalition, whether it's a board member, to go out and be like, hey, you seem like you weren't as involved in this meeting, or you seem to get upset about that topic, or did that not go, do you not feel like we're on the right track, and have a separate meeting with them about that. And to go ahead and to take it straight on. Not wait and hope that they come back to the next meeting not unhappy, but really try to sit down and be like, hey, I noticed something wasn't right with this, or you don't seem completely happy. And that doesn't mean that you're going to go back on the decisions that were made, but sometimes people just need to feel heard, and you can avoid a lot of conflict by making sure everyone has their voice at the table, and then if someone is upset, having that communication later with them to make sure everything's okay. Another thing, and this really goes back to also the avoiding conflict. And I want to show at the bottom of your screen, you'll see this is from the Engaging Your Community, a toolkit for partnership, collaboration, and action. And I have this link, and I can make sure Leah sends it out because it's a great publication for you all that a lot of this information came from. But really knowing the difference between interests when you're focused on your organization motivation for partnering and your potential partner's motivation versus positions, which is getting bogged down in achieving a particular goal, interests forming the building blocks of a lasting relationships. We want to make sure that we have shared interests and we're always focused on the motivation for partnering and our potential partner's motivation instead of like, we just need to achieve this all the time. We need to keep going. And just having this one-track mind about what we're trying to accomplish, we have to remember that we're making those links. And so really focusing on the interest is the building blocks of lasting agreements and relationships. And again, this goes back to when you think about your relationships and your marriage, a lot of times you have different positions on things and you might be fighting, but at the end of the day, you have the same interests. And so that's what we need to continually focus back on, is getting back to those interests. I know we're getting close on time, so I'm trying to figure out quickly for you to be respectful of your time. To MOU or not to MOU, and I say, and I'm going to go through these different ways of establishing, there's not always that you need a memorandum of understanding or a coalition involvement agreement. It's really up to you and your partner as you move forward in the trust that you've built. I say a lot of times, especially when you're thinking about bigger departments like school system and law enforcement, it's really important to have something that they can go back to. But it is something that you have to work out one-on-one. As we mentioned, every relationship is different, so the process will look different. But in thinking about maintaining those partnerships, the first step is to obviously identify and engage the stakeholders, to establish those personal relationships. Again, and I saw Xavier say amen to the fact we're talking about clarifying those goals and objectives, that mission, choose and implement that partnership, and then make sure that you're establishing that MOU, that establish the government's procedures and ground rules for how you're going to make decisions together. So even if it's not going to be a formal agreement, making sure you're all on the same page about what you want out of each other, how you're going to make it happen, and how you're going to respect each other through the process is so important. So here's like the overall gist of what we're talking about, the point. If you do the legwork up front and with intention and communicate with intentionality, and you build a shared vision and plan, and you stand by your needs, you will build a sustainable and worthwhile partnership. And this is so true. It's really about doing the research, being intentional about the ask, having that shared vision, and then standing up for your needs. And this is where we can really build strong partnerships moving forward. And so I really, like I said, I was trying to finish up quickly. So if you have questions, Alex and I and Leah will both stay on the line. But thank you so much for your time and attention today. We hope you got something out of this that you can take back and really start moving forward with intentionality and building capacity and getting people to truly help you do the work that we know is so great and important for your coalition. Alex, Leah?
Yes, thank you guys so much. This is Alex. I appreciate your time and all your feedback in the chat and everything. Very good conversations, and I'm excited to hear what you guys do taking this back to your community.
Yes, thank you. I will be following up with an email with the survey and with some more information on getting some credit hours for this as well.
And we'll stay online if anyone has any questions or comments. We'll stay online for another 5 minutes, so feel free to put it in the chat box or unmute your line, and Leah and I will stay here.
Xavier's asking if he can take this presentation to his coalition.
Yeah, well, you're sending out the slides, right?
Yep.
Okay, and I'll make sure that all the slides will have the links to any of the information so they could go and pull down the big ones. The big document, sorry. I was half in the middle to speak.
Everybody's saying thank you in the comments, so thank you guys. That's so nice.
No questions?